Welcome. Baseball BC brought us together. Happy to be here with Marika Lyszczyk. I'm Alexis Brudnicki. I currently work for Baseball America. My last job before that was for Major League Baseball. I work before that as a freelance reporter for a bunch of publications, Canadian Baseball Network. Primarily, I worked for the Blue Jays for 8 seasons as a statistician and scoreboard operator. I'm the press officer for Canada's women's national team. If the team ever gets a chance to go back out and compete again after this pandemic is done. And I'm happy to be here with Marika.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm Marika, like Alexis said. I play at Rivier University in NCAA baseball with men, and I also play on Team Canada as well as Baseball BC women's team.
And I think Baseball BC brought us together to kind of talk about some of the issues rampant in baseball right now, particularly for women. Obviously, we are 2 white women, so we don't have the added intersectionality of any other layers that might be piled on top of that. But we are women who are in baseball, and we're happy to share some experiences in the hope that hopefully things get better for other people. We'd also like to share what we've been encouraged by, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and hopefully anybody who's watching this can take that to heart and understand that even if it sounds like we are complaining at any point, that we just want to make this a better place for the people who come after us, for the people who are currently in the game, and for anybody who wants to get into the game in the future. And yeah, I guess I'll pass it to you, Marika, to just kind of like give your baseball background a little bit too, when you started playing, how you got into it, and then we'll get a little deeper into the experiences.
All right, sounds good. So I grew up in Tawasin, so I played just for Tawasin minor up until about grade 7, and then I ended up playing AA with the Delta Tigers until I ended up playing in the PBL in Surrey. And then for the rest of my high school career, I finished off in the PBL, and then from there I got scouted at an MLB. It was called MLB Grit, and it was basically like a big showcase for girls. And I got picked up by Jeremy Booth there, and we ended up connecting with another university. And I am now playing at Rivier University in Nashua, New Hampshire. But Alexis, I know you've been in the industry for quite a while. Like, tell me when you first started.
Yeah, I began playing baseball when I was really little. When I was 8, is when I started playing the game. I played on boys teams. Also, when I had my first, I guess, experiences as a little girl on a team of boys, and the dads who didn't love that, and the players who didn't love that. And so it all started quite early for me, but it's been, I guess, it's come back around since I've been in the industry. I think I started in 2010, getting back into the game, I guess, onto the actual working side of it. And I got my first job with the Blue Jays then. I also did an internship with Baseball America that year. I worked in the Australian Baseball League. I think every job that I've had too, there's been issues for women, and I've had a lot of different kind of roles. Like I said, with the Blue Jays, I was a statistician and scoreboard operator, so I worked on the production crew. And when I got there, my boss was a woman, and nobody else on the crew of 25 was a woman. We were the only 2, and before she hired me, she was the only one. And that is getting better. But when I went to Baseball America, I was the only woman intern that they had in recent memory, and maybe at all. Working for Baseball America now, I'm the only female reporter that they've had full time ever, which is obviously still disappointing. We do want to celebrate the firsts, and I know that we can talk about Marika being the first too, but it's disappointing too that it's never happened before. It's an accomplishment that, people are doing these things, and we're doing these things now, but it's hard not to acknowledge that this should have happened before 2020. This should have happened before this millennium. These things should have been going on for a long time. And I mean, for you, there's been a lot of attention around being the first. Do you take that? Is that like, does that go multiple ways for you in your mind when you think about it?
Yeah, it's crazy because I always hear stories of other girls and they're like, well, I always wanted to play in high school or I wanted to play in college, but at the time, like it wasn't a progressive enough like time for them to break into the sport. And I feel like as of right now, like people's like idea of it is starting to like slowly trickle in. And then now that I see even this year, like 10 times the amount of girls are now playing college baseball. They're not just because of me, because of other girls as well. But I'm so happy to see the amount that have joined this year, just because now, before I think it was, first of all, no one really publicized it. And then second of all, if you can't see it, I feel like you're never gonna be it. Like if something doesn't exist, everybody's like, no, you can't do it. Because even me growing up my whole life, I was always told that I was gonna have to switch over to softball. And I was so driven and like I knew I wanted to play baseball, and everybody was like, well, you're good at this level and but you probably won't make it to the next level. And then you probably won't make it to the next level. And then slowly I just kept pushing through it. And I always would get this advice of like, I need to switch over. I won't be able to make it. You're not strong enough because you're a girl. You probably won't fit in. But then eventually I just kind of like started ignoring it and kind of just letting it brush off my back. And now I'm so happy I did, because I think like if you put enough like energy and time and commitment into something and you show your drive, I think you can do a lot of things. And I think a lot of other women can make a huge impact in this sport as well. And I'm excited to see for the future.
And I mean, before we get into some of the experiences that maybe we're a little more reluctant to share, you have had a pretty good reception at your college. It's been a good group. I mean, what's it been like just to have that positivity for the experience that you've been going through?
It's so uplifting. Like the amount of people that want to be a part of the journey now is amazing. Because before, I think it was kind of like you're by yourself. You kind of will kind of just like let you do your thing. And now that I'm finally there and I've kind of proven myself at the university and stuff like that. And even before that, everybody there was so positive. Like I always thought when I'd get older, it would get harder. And it still might. I'm not all the way through it yet, but I definitely had a harder time when I was younger. And it kind of sounds like our roles are kind of reversed. You're having a little bit more tougher time now than you did earlier. So I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, I came into I guess the game when I began working in it a little bit naive. I thought, if I worked hard, if I did all the right things, got my foot in the right doors, networked with the right people, put in all the hours, that would just kind of work out for me. And uh opportunity after opportunity kind of past me, and they were going to other people, or they were going to people with less education than I had, or with less experience than I had, or fewer contacts than I had, or a lesser network, or fewer ideas. And I didn't understand that. So I was definitely naive to kind of what was at play. I know there is a layer added on for us in baseball, especially being Canadian, to go to the States, to work in the States. There are visas, there are sponsorship issues, there are things that we have to do. Dollar amounts are different when you're going to college in the States versus in Canada. So that is an added layer to it, but I couldn't fathom that was why I was losing out on so many of these jobs. I would have great interviews, I would have great phone calls. And so it didn't really hit me for a while that, maybe I was having some issues because I am a woman, or maybe that was coming into play. And then I just kept getting asked the same questions over and over that kind of made me pause, and like, how did you get into baseball? And that's a fine question until you're asked it for the 100th time and you've never heard a man ask that question. It's not overtly sexist, it's not even offensive. But the fact is that the only reason that men ask women that question and they don't ask men is because men feel that men belong in baseball. And the feeling for me began to become like, oh, I don't belong here. That's why people are wondering how I got here. And that's been that's just kind of escalated over time and grown into, I guess, bigger issues, but also my awareness has grown. So maybe I'm just becoming more aware of it, which I think everybody kind of is now. I think there is an awareness going around about a lot of things. I mean, even the level, I'm sure, like, of hatred that we see on social media, when MLB posts about softball or posts about baseball players. It's I know I've seen that you and some of the other members of the women's national team posting some of that, and I don't know, like, how does that feel?
Honestly, I've seen it a lot. I mean, I'm an avid social media poster. I mean, all the platforms aren't the greatest, and I always have to remember. I always think of something. Nobody's gonna try to tear you down if they're below you. It's like it's usually when you're up here and they're kind of like just trying to pull you down with them and pull them in. And honestly, first of all, I never read any of them. I'm like the person that I just totally ignore them. And if I do, it honestly doesn't really bother me unless it's super personalized, just because I know these people don't have anything better to do. Like they don't know me personally and what I've gone through to get to this point. And everyone's going to have their own opinion. And I think in the end, like not everyone's going to love you in life. And you kind of have to live with that. And although it's not the best and it sucks, and like the comments that are made are super sexist usually, which is really sad. I know a lot of the girls take it to heart, and it makes me sad that it makes them sad basically. But I think over time now I've really learned to deal with the situation and kind of just let it roll off my back. It's same with comments that have been made to my face. I mean, it kind of just doesn't phase me anymore. I know, I'm sure you're the same. It's kind of like in one ear, out the other, like, yeah, yeah, kind of whatever.
I think I mean that's a super mature mindset to make, and I'm not good at it. I am really not good at it. There was at the end of the 2019 season, I was going around the Blue Jays clubhouse like saying goodbye to like players, saying thank you, have a good off season, see you next year. And one of the players was like, hey, like, I know I gave you a really hard time this year. And I was like, yeah, you did. Like, and he was like, well, it's because I knew
Horrible.
you could handle it. And I was like, I could not handle it. I did not handle that well. Like, he was calling me out in the clubhouse. I would be trying to do my job, interviewing another player or interviewing someone, and he would yell at me. He would make comments to me and the person I was talking to, and other people would have to step in. People would step in. And one of the things, and he was always constantly trying to joke around. And one of the things that really sat with me a lot was he said, something about media being the worst part of his day. And I never got over that. I was like, I mean, it's true. I guess the media is the worst part of a player's day. You know, if you have a good game and you just want to celebrate, you got to talk to the media first. If you have a
You
bad
have bad
game
game, you
and
gotta
you want to just
reminisce on it
turn the
again.
page, you have to discuss what went wrong. If and so like I get it, the media was the worst part of and he didn't even mean it. It was like a comment that just was meant to just
Generic, like
like,
thrown out there.
yeah, roll off my back. But I thought about that every day. And I was like, no, man, like I
God.
think about this every day. Like I'm the worst part of your day. I'm the worst part of everybody's day. When they open the doors to the media, I'm thinking like you guys are all like running away or like, oh, we got to talk to these people now. And I'm so not good at handling that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's super impressive that you can ignore the comments. And I honestly like do not know how to do that. I am so bad at it. I'm not good.
I used to be horrible. Like every little thing would bother me and it was just like eating away at me. And I was like, if I'm gonna make it in this industry, those things can't bother me because there's gonna be so many more where it came from. Like it's never ending. And so just like the constant comments, like it's just like, oh, another one. Same comment. They're not very original either. So I usually hear like the same one. It's like, go to the kitchen or like something like that. And it's like, come on, man, like get a new one. Kind of getting old. Spice it up a bit, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we do obviously want to talk about inclusivity and how teams, how people, how men, how organizations can be more inclusive and have better environments. But I do think in order to get to that, we do need to talk about some of these things that they need to be aware of. Like, it shouldn't be the responsibility of you or me to get over these comments. It should be the responsibility of people to make sure that we're not receiving these comments. They should never happen in the first place, and that shouldn't be an onus on us to have to fix it and to have to deal with it. And a lot of it is like, oh, like, it's just boys being boys, or they're just joking. And I know I've perpetuated it at times too, and I'm ashamed of that. I've had a lot of time to reflect on that, especially over the last couple months when more and more issues have become more public about women in baseball and reporters in baseball. And I think back to like, I remember 10 years ago in 2011, I was at a tournament. I was with Baseball America. I was with two of my colleagues from Baseball America. We were sitting in the scout seats at the Tournament of Stars, and a scout that was sitting next to me just straight up asked me to come back to his hotel room. And I was obviously like, first of all, what? And second of all, no. But when we went back to our office, me and my colleagues, we laughed about it. We joked about it. Like, how ridiculous was that guy? Like, that's crazy. But that perpetuates these ideas too. Like, we didn't go back and say like, hey guys, you guys should have stepped in, or somebody should have said something, or what are the protocols for this? Or I laughed it off because I was like, ha ha ha, how ridiculous.
That's kind of the way you have to do it, especially when you're kind of the only woman in the situation. There's no one really to go to. So I think laughing, making it a joke is like the thing that I've also resorted to in light of the moment.
Well, and even worse, I feel like sometimes to be part of the boys club I've joined in, like even when I went to scout school, we would be in a group before the games would start, and people would start ranking the girls in the stands on the scout scale. They would rank the female people sitting in the stands, all the women, on the 20 to 80 scale. And I wanted to be part of that group. I wanted to be with them. So I would join it. I would join in with that. And I'm ashamed of that. And that was in 2016. I was almost 30 years old, and I was joining in, and I was perpetuating these problematic ideals. It is something that I'm not proud about, but I am more comfortable even right now calling myself out rather than calling out the other people who were the problem or who started the problem, because it is so hard for women to talk about too. You just feel like you're going to be ostracized. You're going to be the one who gets called out. You're going to be the one who becomes the problem. If you harass me and I tell someone, hey, Marika harassed me, then they're going to let you know, and then you're going to be mad at me. And if you're a man who's in a position of power, then I'm the problem. Yeah.
Get rid of you. Yeah, exactly. No, I've definitely been in that kind of situation, and it's hard not to be a part of it, because when you're trying to be a part of a team or a club or anything like that, you try to do the same things as the guys do, and it's not always the right thing. And sometimes that also takes us back a bit. I mean, we also hold ourselves back as well, and I should hold myself accountable as well for things that of course have happened, because it's just, I think you're in the moment and things happen and you're like, okay, well, if I do this, like, I'll fit in more. And it's like, you shouldn't have to do that. Like, it should just be more accepting, I would say, and not have to go to these extreme measures to be a part of the old boys club. But I know it's tough because it's been like that for so long and they don't want it to change. So having anybody break into the sport is a super difficult thing, just because it's all guys, and guys just want to see guys, not girls.
It's incredible too that I feel like there's so much positive reinforcement when they're like, oh, like, we love having you around because you're just one of the guys, or like, you can come with us because you're one of the guys. And that's the positive reinforcement that I was like playing into. I'm like, okay, if I rank these girls in the stands with these guys, then I have people to have dinner with, and I'm not alone.
Like, no,
or exactly. I can bounce some ideas off these guys later because they think I'm cool. Like, I'm one of them. I'm with them. And, you know, and that's what you need to be to survive. Like, I wasn't full-time employed at that time. It took me 9 years in the industry
You're
to get a
just holding
full-time
on.
job. It's you're just surviving, and it's always going to be easier, especially when you're just surviving, for them to get rid of you rather than to get rid of the person in power, the man they to hold accountable. That's so hard for them to do.
Yeah, even like I've been questioned like going to college, and I said when I said I was going to play men's baseball, somebody was like, "Oh, because you want to be with the boys, not the girls." Like kind of like hint hint, like you just want to be on that team because there's so many guys. I'm like, "No, I want to play men's baseball. It's because it's the game I've played my whole entire life and something I've dreamed of doing, and I have a huge drive and passion for it. And why can't that be the reason behind it?" Like I know um, we were talking earlier about even interviewing, like people assume you being nice to them is flirting or doing anything. Like you can't just have a general interest in the sport itself. It always has to have some sort of extension along with it. It just can't be that I like baseball and I want to talk to you about baseball. There's always something added.
Yeah, the women never get the benefit of the doubt. If you show interest in someone, the primary assumption is never that it is a professional interest. The primary assumption is if you show interest, if you laugh too much or you smile too much, like, well, then if they ask you out, it's your fault. Or if they expect something from you, that's your fault. You led them on, or you did something to create that environment. And to be fair, I am glad conversations have started about this. I've had conversations with teams, with MLB GMs about this. And obviously, the problems go well beyond. We've seen problems with harassment, with other things that are even worse than that. But I do think it all starts with that perception. It grows out of the perception of what are women here for? Are they here because they are professionally interested in this game? And there is not any woman I know who just like fell into her job in baseball and just randomly landed there and doesn't know more than everybody around her. And so
Exactly.
to do twice as much to have half of the assumption of knowledge is just insulting. It's crazy.
Like sometimes you see even like guys who have half the education, half the things are in the same position of a woman who's more educated, more everything in that motion, but they end up in the same spot. And you're like, this just isn't right because if this woman was a guy, she would be here, not here with this other person. So I think it definitely holds us back. And I'm hoping for a future of more gender diversity within the sport. I think it'll be really interesting with years to come because I'm seeing a lot more people get interested into it. A lot more younger girls want to go into the coaching. They want to do hitting and stuff, so they're starting to specialize in it. And teams are starting to open up more in the minors and stuff like that, and having people come in, which is super nice.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I don't like doing this and I rarely do it, but because you mentioned it, I feel like I should lay out my education too because I've struggled so hard in this industry, and I have an undergraduate degree, I have a graduate diploma in sports journalism, I have a master's degree in assessment and evaluation, and I focused on scouting, and I'm doing a doctorate degree. I did start by studying the lack of diversity in baseball's leadership roles, but I have recently decided to change my focus to the lack of sufficient structures in place to combat the power imbalance that women and minorities in baseball experience when they are trying to come forward to report discrimination and sexual harassment. And that is something that I feel very strongly about, and that is something I want to change. But I have multiple advanced degrees. I went to scout school. I bring a lot to the table. I work for Baseball Canada. I worked in the Australian Baseball League. I did multiple internships in also different sports. I don't think I could have done any more than I did. And I didn't get my first full-time job for 9 years. And even then, it was an entry-level job. And I am now leaving the industry because there is not a place for me. There's not a place where I can get a job that is beyond entry level, where I can actually afford to pay off the education that I had to have to get to this point. And this isn't the way that it should be. And I don't know if there's some secret or something that I did or some rumor out there, but a lot of it for me comes back to that I'm a woman. I've been told straight to my face from people who work for clubs that women don't belong in baseball. I've been told that it is a distraction. I've been told that it will never work. And so for me, it's hard to see anything other than that being the biggest obstacle. And I still want to make the game a better place, even though I'm leaving. But at this point, it is sad to say that I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. But I do hope that there is better on the horizon for people in the future.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy to me. Like even listening to everything that you have said to me, and it's just like it shocks me at the lack of diversity, especially with gender in the MLB and in baseball in general. And I definitely wish there was a lot more. And I'm hoping that in the future it changes and there's less kind of that sexist move towards either. And I mean, it was amazing for me breaking in 2020 as one of the first females play, be recruited to play NCAA baseball. But on the other hand, it's like it's 2020, like that's such a long time, and there were so many girls before me that I have talked to that have wanted to do that, and it's sad that they couldn't follow their dreams. But my hope is that now that this is kind of more of a paved way, that women in baseball have a choice to play college baseball and not have to switch over if they choose, because I believe that softball and baseball are just a very two different games basically. And one of the hardest things I would say is the lack of money for women in baseball, because that's what I'm struggling with right now. It's a real struggle for me. I mean, I'm playing Division 3, so you can't get athletic. I can get academic, but even with academic, with the exchange rate, it's insane. And it's not like there are any scholarships for women in baseball. So that's going to hold a lot of girls back. You just simply can't afford to play it. So that's why I feel like a lot of girls switch over, because you can get better scholarships in softball. So I'm hoping for the future to change that and hopefully maybe start some sort of scholarship fund so girls can go and play baseball, because I think that's the money portion of it is like it was 10 times harder. It was like, first of all, okay, first you need to find a school that wants to take a girl and that you're going to get developed at, and then second of all, can you afford it? So it's just like the two pieces together super hard, and I want to stay at my school forever, but it's super hard to pay for. So I'm working full time right now. It's just real, it's real life. So to try to pay for that.
And I mean, let's be honest too, to get to where you are at, is not only just like an accomplishment of your skills, but you're a testament to your will. I mean, I know even when I was 8 years old, I was getting parents hating on me playing for a boys team, other players, obviously who got it from their parents. Like when you're 8 years old, you don't come into those ideas on your own. But I mean, you're 20 years old and you've had to, I'm sure, deal with that along the entire way.
Yeah. I know growing up, this is something I never really talked about. Now I'm sort of coming to be more open to it, because I was always more ashamed of myself, even though now I see it as like this was a problem with the guys and not so much more of me. But when I talk to girls, and they always seem to have the hardest part in like grade 7, grade 8, that's when the guys are trying to figure out like, how do you talk to a girl? Well, if you talk to her and you're nice to her, that means you like her. So then it's like everybody makes fun of you. So it's just a hard thing at that time. And now that I went through that, I'm so happy that I pushed through. But in the moment, it was horrible. Like I hated baseball at one point. Like it became something I hated, and I used to love it just because of what had happened to me. Like in those younger years, like I got spit on, I got thrown into offenses, I've had my equipment broken, used, thrown, everything you could imagine. And I was told that if I wanted to play baseball, that I was going to have to live with these things. And I hope that no one ever has to go through what I did in those younger years. And I'm so happy now that I stuck with it, and I'm so blessed that the people that I'm now working with, and even in college, it's amazing. I haven't had one negative thing said to me from another player or even my own teammates. It's all been super positive, and I'm super happy with the way the guys have like dealt with the situation and everything. But it was definitely not the easiest coming into it. I was losing the love for the game, and it's a super hard thing to get back, especially when people around you don't want to be there. I mean, you never want to be in an environment where you're not liked or wanted to be there. I mean, I walked in on one of my teams being like, let's bully her until she basically quits. And it's funny now because I always tell them it's like it sucked in the moment, but the same guys I graduated with and whatnot, like I'm still out best friends with them, and they just grew out of it, and they're like, I am so sorry I ever treated you that way. It's just kind of like that domino effect. One person jumps on and then it's the other. And then at the end of it, there was only one guy that was nice to me. And then he got bullied so much for being nice to me that eventually he just joined the other group and you end up pretty much being singled out. So I'm I'm so, like, happy with where I'm at now, though, and the way I'm being treated, and I can only hope that for the rest of my baseball career, it's like that, and it only gets better from here with doing these sort of talks and we're mostly just hoping to help coaches and players just see a different side to it, and I mean, it does affect girls, and you don't know, but those words you say could be the reason why a girl steps down from a thing that she loves.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned being more open now, and for me, it's really taken me knowing that I'm leaving the industry to be open about these things, and it is shameful that that's what it takes. It shouldn't be that for anyone else. It's I was so afraid. Like I said, I was a freelancer for 9 years, and it was always going to be easier to get me out than someone who was working for a club or someone who was working really anywhere. I didn't have an HR department I could go to. I didn't even know who I could tell if I told someone who was involved with that club. I didn't know if they would be like, okay, she's a problem, get her out of here. And I was
Just
constantly
stirring the
afraid of that.
pot.
It's a realistic expectation to think that they will get mad at the person who is bringing the problem up rather than the person who is being the
The
problem.
real problem.
And it's I don't know how long it's going to take to shift that culture in baseball, because culture shifts take a long time. Culture shifts are huge undertakings, and I am appreciative that people are starting to try to do that, but I also want people to understand how hard that is and how long that's going to take, because if you don't see it paying dividends right away, if you don't understand that encouraging people to be open or creating pathways for people to come forward comfortably, then you're going to quit before you even get started. You need to realize this is going to be a long standing effort, and it's not going to be easy. I was talking to an MLB GM yesterday, and he was telling me about all the ideas he had and these grand gestures he wants to make. And he doesn't just want to fix his organization, he wants to fix the whole industry. And I love the enthusiasm, but I also think this could take a lifetime. This could take a very, very long time. It's even when you see things like, for me, when MLB was tweeting about Kim Ng's hiring and how she broke systemic barriers, I was like, MLB is the system and the barrier. And
You're the one
this
not letting people in.
lack of awareness is just, it is astounding, but it also is everywhere. I mean, I didn't have that awareness of myself when I was naive. I didn't have the awareness of what was going on around me all the time. There are a lot of situations that you don't understand arising. And I do think that we need to point our fingers directly at the people in power. These are the people who need to change the structures. And you're probably, whoever is listening or watching this, all of the people in power are probably white men, and you need to be aware of your privilege. You don't have to think about going into work every day, and if someone is going to think that you're smiling too much and that means that you want to go out for dinner with them, or if someone thinks that you're showing an interest in them and it's not professional, even though that's all you're there for, you're just there to work. Or if someone comes into your baseball facility and you don't understand that they're just there to learn and they want to know more, because this is a game that can be loved whether you're a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. This isn't your game. This isn't for you. It was, I'm sure, invented by men, and for a long time only involved men, but like now's the time to realize that you need to move over a little bit, make some room.
It's funny because I mean, if you look in the title of MLB, where does it say it's only men? I mean, there's nothing that indicates that it could be a only male sport. It's just because it's predominantly been played that way. And I think all this stuff starts at the bottom as well, with people like the coaches. If your coaches are watching this, and even players, like that's what got me through. Those few coaches that just pushed for me and were on my side. That's the reason why I'm here and where I'm at today. It only takes a few people, and if you can be that person for someone, I think that makes a huge difference. And if almost like people realize that and more start being on their side, I think baseball would be a much more inclusive place.
Yeah, I mean, I told one of the people in baseball that I talked to recently, I said that one of the hardest things for me, there's been a lot of glaring incidents, and a lot of big things that made a big impact on me. But I think one of the things that really kind of has broken me down over time is the constant testing of knowledge, the constant questioning of why I'm here, the constant wondering or amazement at what I know. I love, just like anybody else here, I love talking about how infielders are working on getting that four seam on the ball across the diamond. I like talking to outfielders about how they work on their defense when they really don't have an opportunity, because you need batted balls to be able to do that. And it's not the same off of fungo as it is even in the cage or in the game. And there's just not a lot of opportunity for that for outfielders. I love talking to catchers about pitch sequencing, about how they know if a guy can trust his stuff that day or if he's telling them the truth about it. I love talking to pitchers about how they develop new pitches, why they think they will work, how they come into them, what the grip is, how it changes if the seams are bigger or smaller. I love baseball. We love baseball. It's not amazing that I love baseball. It's not amazing that I know a lot about it. It's my job. It took me a long time to get to this point. That should not be a point of wonderment. And it always is, because the perception for women is not there. We're never given the benefit of the doubt. And I know I've said that already, but I just need to hammer that home.
Yeah, I know even from playing in college, people are like, wow, how'd you get there? Like, what'd you do? Kind of thing. And it's like, well, I worked hard and I didn't take no for an answer, basically. And it's just always assuming something else. There's a different reason why you're there. It's not because you have the talent or anything that comes with it. And I'm so blessed to have such amazing college coaches as well that are so open to having me. And that's the one thing that they looked at was, he always said, he's like, I didn't look at you as a girl. Like, I first saw you, had no idea you were a girl, watched your video, didn't know yet until I was told. And he was like, I judged you on being a player, not as what your gender was. And he was like, if you can contribute to me winning games, I will take you on any day. I don't care what your gender is or what you do, as long as you contribute and you're part of this kind of like family-ish sort of thing. So I'm super happy with the guys on the team because they treat me like a sister and they just want to succeed. They know how bad I want to help them win and how much time and dedication I'm willing to put in for it. So I think now that they see that, it helps, of course. And when I try to make content to show like the stuff that I do behind the scenes, because it wasn't just one day I woke up and I became a college female baseball player. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of time, like lots of days, lots of missed things to get where I am at now. And I still have so much more stuff to do coming. Like I love learning about baseball, and I know you do too. And that's the really interesting part. Like recently I've been learning with some of the professional guys, and the fact that they're willing to have me on and support women in baseball is huge steps for players, especially.
Well, for me, it even stands out that when you said, I just, I'm a female college baseball player. Like, we shouldn't even have to say that. You're a college baseball player. You're a college baseball player. That's what you are. You're the same. You should be equal to those guys. We should be able to label that equally. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, we need to celebrate these things because, like you said, you need to see it to be it. People need to see you doing it, and people need to understand that you can do it. So maybe I can do it too. And I totally understand that. But also, at some point, we need to start to normalize this kind of, we need to normalize the behavior, the actions. We need to normalize just having
Girls
women
being in
around.
baseball.
I'm sure, yeah,
Exactly.
it
I mean,
needs to become common.
I can't agree more. It's something that, like, even growing up, I was like, I always thought that if I was going to play college baseball, it was going to be as a pitcher because, of course, there had only ever been pitchers to play college baseball in the past. And when I was told that he thought it was good enough to catch at that level, I was like, whoa, hold up. Like, my whole mindset shifted, and just having one person tell me that it's possible to change things. But that came with a lot of pressure, I would say, for my first college season, because in my eyes, and even as a female, it's like if something goes wrong, they're only going to do it one time. And if it's a good experience, then let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's have people come through the system. Other teams want girls if it's successful. But if you hear a bad story, if the girl didn't play and all this stuff, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, I heard they had a bad experience, so let's just not even. And I mean, before I went to this MLB Grit, I can't even express how many emails I sent to colleges. I just would sit on my computer. I probably sent it out to like 2,000. Everything in junior college, everything in division, everything. And like, it only takes a few people to get back to you. And I figured, I was like, if I email this amount of people, there has to be someone that is ready for this and wants to. Everybody would be like, oh, nice swing, like, looks good, but like, we're not really looking for that right now. And like, there was never anything like sexist say to me, but I would say I got like not a lot of emails back. So I think it's like strength in numbers. And now just having people like Jeremy on my side was huge, just for scouting, and even the future if I want to play, try to play like indie ball or something like that, having bigger names on the side of it. And that's helped me a lot with working with Trevor, because people are like, this guy is credible, he won Cy Young, so clearly she's good enough to do this with him. But it's funny because it's like, you're not credible until you're with that person.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. I know, you said strength in numbers, and and people talk about a lot trying to get women in leadership positions and having more women. And yeah, there are some women who perpetuate the problem. There are misogynistic women. Like I said, I participated in perpetuating the problem as well at times. And so having women isn't always going to be the answer, but also, I mean, yeah, you need to have just more options, more people who are understanding. I do think it is an answer. I think you at least try it out before you toss that idea aside. But I get where it can go wrong. But that's the thing too. Whether it's Marika being the sole woman on a men's team, or if you have one woman who joins the leadership group wherever you might work, you need to remember that she doesn't represent a whole facet of like the human race. She doesn't represent all women. She represents herself, and you don't need to put that kind of pressure on her to say, like, if she doesn't do well, no woman would do well in this position, or if she does do well, every woman should do well in this position. That's not how it works. Men are not all the same. We never do that to men. We never say, well, Theo Epstein was a great GM for the Cubs, so I'm sure the next man will be great. And he was 28. So let's get the next 28-year-old.
28-year-old.
That's not, yeah, that's not how it
Just
works.
not realistic.
Kim Ng worked in baseball for 30 years, and Theo Epstein had a GM job when he was 28 years old. It's not an equal playing field, but also, like, yeah, don't put pressure on the women that you have. It's nice to show them off and share their accomplishments, and that's great, but it doesn't have to be the conversation every day. When you meet a woman who likes baseball, you don't have to say, like, oh, hey, you should talk to Marika. Like we're not all the same. I mean, I love talking to Marika,
Well,
but
yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's like I feel like people, it's like, oh, like you play baseball, so you probably know this girl that plays baseball, because it's kind of like the whole thing. And I hope that one day, eventually, when I have to explain myself every time that I play men's baseball, not softball, because I kid you not, every time somebody goes, well, what do you play? I'm like, I play baseball. And they're like, oh, you mean softball? I'm like, no, like baseball. They're like, no, that's not a thing. I'm like, well, kind of is sometimes. It's just not very popular.
I mean, people
I hope that one day it's just like, that you could do it if you have that drive and you can accomplish to that level.
I love it. People always think they know better than you do what you're doing.
Yeah. They're
It
like, no,
happens a
no,
lot.
softball. I'm like, I think I know what I do, but you never know.
In case I got confused, I appreciate
Yeah.
you there to pick me up.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
exactly. And it's funny because I don't even notice this, and I just noticed it recently, but whenever I go train, I purposely wear a baseball hat, and I always wear baseball shorts, like men's baseball shorts, and a baseball thing. And I think it's just because if I don't wear a hat and I wear short shorts and a top, people think I play softball or that I am girly and can't handle it kind of thing. So I've just done it my whole life where it's like when I train, I wear this, I look like a guy. So it's like it kind of cements like that thinking that like I am one of the boys.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many things that men and boys don't have to worry about that women do. Even when I went to scout school, in our instruction package, it said to wear collared shirts and dress shorts, and I was like, dress shorts are not a thing for women. It's not, it doesn't exist. Like those instructions were
Mhm.
clearly meant for men, but also like even if they weren't, I still would have known that I had to be careful about what I wore. There were only two women at scout school when I went, including me and my roommate, and we would check with each other each day too. And we're in Arizona, and we always wore long pants and golf shirts or zip shirts, like quarter zips or golf shirts, and long pants every day. And I think I might have worn golf shorts one time because I was like, could be dress shorts, but it's these are the things that we think about. I thought about that every day. If I wear something that's nice, if I wear a dress into the clubhouse, then people think like, oh, like I'm dressing up or like I'm trying to impress somebody. But if I
Mhm.
dress like a slob, like some of these other
People are
people
like,
in some
oh.
clubhouses do, then they're like, what's this girl doing? She doesn't belong here. It's either way, it was like you don't
There's
belong
like
here.
no in
So
between. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, even I laughed, like we wore like men's polos for our baseball photos for the first year, and I was like, oh my gosh, I look ridiculous, and I'm not trying to change the kind of the way, but my coach last year, like they usually would wear like suits, kind of like in ties and stuff like that when they would travel, and he accommodated me and was like, listen, we're gonna wear this, and you can wear this, and Marika, here's a different option, because he knew like I'm not gonna show up in a full suit and tie, like it's just not realistic. And I was so happy he like adapted towards it, and I didn't want to say anything because I'm not trying to change the game, like I'm not trying to creep in a little harder than I'm already here, like I'm already kind of like in this essence, like I don't want to try to change anything per se.
Yeah, so we definitely want to talk about some potential strategies or ideas or ways to just make things better for the people who follow us, for people who want to get into the game, for people who are in the game. We definitely need to get to some of the points of where things maybe have worked or things we've been encouraged by things, and hopefully kind of leave this on a positive note too.
Yeah, I would say for coaches especially, I think words of encouragement are super positive, especially for players. Like as a girl, I take everything I hear to heart. So having someone say encouraging things, like it literally could have been the smallest thing. A coach could come up to me after the game. Like even in college, I had a coach come up to me and he was like, honestly, I was pretty skeptical when I heard that they were gonna have a girl, but you impressed me by that. And even that little thing like changed my whole mindset of kind of like, okay, I belong here. And I think we're not asking to completely change the game. We're more asking to have equal opportunity and have the opportunity to participate. And if we are so credible and eligible for the position to be taken into consideration for that.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a little bit already about maybe some little things along the way that can happen just to be more inclusive. I mean, even if it's just having more women around or having role models that you point to who are women. There are women in different roles in the game, different levels of play as well now. And I think there are people to point to, which is helpful to have those examples. Like we said, you need to see it to be it. And even that isn't always necessary, but it is super helpful. There wasn't anybody that I really saw when I was kind of growing up in the game, or I didn't know a lot of the things. And even when I watched games as a little kid, I didn't see women who were reporting or sideline reporters. Even back then, that wasn't really a thing. So for me, I think if I had had an opportunity to have some female mentors, it would have made a big impact for me. I did have some great mentors, but none of them could answer the questions that I had about women. So just having women around is super helpful. And I think in terms of pathways for reporting incidents as well, there need to be pathways not only for maybe the women or minorities who might be dealing with discrimination or any kind of harassment, but there need to be pathways for the people who are alongside them, even seeing it happen. It can be unclear. Things might not be set out in stone. You might not have a strict understanding of every single situation that could happen and the protocols for every single specific situation. So you need to just have some guidelines, some ways to go about it. I know something happened to me with members of an organization. They all worked for the same organization. I was the only one outside that organization, and the people I was with were very close friends of mine. The person who took it upon themselves to I guess attack me in a verbal assault of belittling and berating and telling me that women don't belong in the game and I should never work in the game. That he worked with these people. I didn't work with them. They were my friends. And not only did I not know what to do, but they didn't know what to do. The pathways weren't clear. Who did they go to? Who did they talk to? They were clear in the moment. They stopped him. They defended me. And for me, that was super shameful. I was embarrassed that they had to do that. That was difficult for me. But beyond that, none of us knew what to do. We didn't know what the pathways were. We didn't know who we could go to. We didn't know who should address this. We didn't know how it would be handled. So we were afraid of the repercussions. I think clarity is super helpful in a lot of situations like that as well. I'm not sure, Marika, have you been in situations where people have just handled things really well and you just think that's a model that people can kind of replicate?
I mean, all the situations I've been, it's usually between me and one other person or a few other people. And honestly, the situations that I have been a part of haven't been handled well, sadly. And it's like, at one point I had a choice to give somebody an ultimatum and I said no, even though that I was the one that was in the right of the situation and they could have lost something. And I told them no because I didn't want to be responsible for that. I didn't want to be, oh, it's because she's a girl and she got him fired or got him kicked off the team or anything like that. And I didn't want to stick out already more than I did. So I kind of just I sucked it up and I pretended like nothing happened. And like they knew who it was because they're gonna call you out. And it's like they don't do a very good job of hiding everything and it's kind of just exploited everywhere. So like you said, just having better ways of dealing with the situations that do arise.
Yeah, it's so hard. I think even just a general sense of awareness and just constantly keeping it in your mind that the onus is always on the wrong person. The responsibility is on the person who is victimized to come forward. The responsibility is on them to decide most of the time what they want done. to the person who victimized them. The responsibility then that they take on themselves is if that person is punished, then it was because of them. And so the onus is always on the wrong person, the responsibility is always on the wrong party. And even if there's nothing that can be done in particular about that, I think a sense of awareness and understanding what that's like is really important. I mean, even for me, like I said, there's no way I would have shared the experiences that I have lately if I was planning on staying in baseball. It's embarrassing for me. It's
Nobody wants to be around
shameful.
you.
Nobody wants to be around me. I worry now that my friends who I talk to about this now, they're more careful with their language, or anytime I say something, even if I'm joking, they're like, oh, I appreciate you saying that. And I'm like, so we don't have a friendship anymore. And now we have
Yeah,
a
you're like,
relationship.
because they're scared that you're gonna do it to them, and it's like, it's not that you did it to them out of a spiteful reason. It was because they were in the wrong, and I feel like if it was male to male, it'd be a completely different situation. And frankly, when these things happen and men come forward about things, it's usually like that guy was so like credible and all this stuff coming forward, and then it's like women, it's like shameful to come forward. I know that's like a thing that's happened to me in the past. It's like admitting anything. I thought, like, when all this stuff was happening to me when I was younger, I was embarrassed. I was like, maybe I shouldn't have talked so much. Like, that's my fault that this happened to me because I talked too much. And I thought for the longest time, I was like, I wish I hadn't ever said anything, which is sad because you shouldn't have to change who you are for people to respect respect you. And I would be nervous. I'd talk a lot, and then they would just make fun of me for that, and it just like snowballed. And I wish that now that I look back on it, I'm happy that I can see that it wasn't me and that I didn't need to change who I was. It was them that was more the problem, and not so much me. But that crushed me for a long time.
I would challenge people to think about all the ways in their lives that they give men the benefit of the doubt and they don't give it to women. I know, even I had a conversation with someone the other day and we were talking about a homeowner, and we used the pronoun he. We just assumed that a homeowner was a man. We just assumed that a doctor is a man. We just assumed that anyone who works in baseball is a man. I can't tell you how many times my email signature has my name, my full name, Alexis. I always sign every email, Alexis. I always get emails back that say, hi, Alex, and then refer to me as a man. Because when we think of someone in baseball, we
It's a
think
man.
of men. And that's just where our mind goes. And I think we should just be more conscious about where we give men the benefit of the doubt and where we give women the benefit of the doubt, or we don't. If a woman comes up to you at a baseball facility and wants to ask you a question about hitting in the cage, let's just assume that she might know how to use a bat or how to hold it, or maybe just don't go offering unsolicited advice all the time if you wouldn't give that same unsolicited advice to a man. Just think
Yeah,
twice.
that's the thing. And I mean, when I was younger, and even still now sometimes, I'm scared to ask questions about things that I can change because I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. And the thing that, like, the biggest thing I struggled with is that when I was making changes and people would be watching, of course, everybody struggles when they're first trying to do something. So committing to it was super difficult for me because I never at any point wanted to let my guard down and look bad, because it was like, oh, yeah, there's the girl, there she is. Like, anything you do, it's like you roll over, it's like, oh, you struck out that time? Oh, it's because you're a girl, not because pitchers have the advantage and the game is to strike the batter out. It's always like, well, she's a girl, so there it is, there it comes. Like, it always just somehow gets integrated back into it. And it'll look at me like, oh, well, you're good for a girl, but you know what I mean? Like, I want to be looked at as, you're good for a baseball player.
Yeah, I mean, if we are hoping or forcing men to think twice about their actions or their pasts because of this conversation, I mean, I don't feel bad about that because we've been second guessing ourselves our whole lives because of those people. And I know people always talk about there are good men, not all men are bad. And I used to be one of those people who always said that. But if you have a rotting tooth and you go to the dentist, you don't say like, hey man, don't worry about that one because all the rest of my teeth are fine. Like, that's what we're dealing with. We need to deal with that rotting tooth. We need to deal with the problem. We can't ignore that problem just because there are some people who are doing it fine. And I think it should be evident now that this industry just has a culture problem across everywhere, whether it's in BC or in Ontario or in Canada or in the major leagues and the minor leagues. Baseball has a culture problem and it needs to be addressed. It's going to take a long time and it's going to take a lot of work. And it's going to take clarity and it's going to take pathways for people to feel comfortable. It's going to take having more women around, more women in leadership, people who care about these issues. And it's going to take a lot. This is an overhaul of a system. This isn't going to happen easily. So when it doesn't happen right away and you don't see large scale changes immediately, please don't give up. I do want to help change the game.
You can, and as coaches and players, you could change someone's opinion on baseball. I mean, it only took those few people that encouraged me and guys that were like, hey, you know what, you had a good game today, and all this stuff that changed my mind of the way it starts with you. And I think holding yourself accountable first, and really we're just trying to start the conversation and hoping that we can make it more equal for the future. We know it's not going to happen right away, but I think it starts with yourself. And even I know we get caught up in it sometimes, so I think we all understand, but moving forward, we're hoping to see a little bit of a change and more understanding in the sport.
And I think you and I are good examples of even some of the different ways that things can go. I know you had it rough when you were younger as a teenager. I got kicked out of baseball basically when I was 12 years old. There was no spot for me anymore. I needed to play softball. I had those bad experiences very early on. My mom saw that. That wasn't encouraging for our family for me to be the one girl on the team. So then she put me on a team where I was going to be among a lot of girls. And that was number one, because there weren't any playing opportunities where there were all girls baseball teams where I lived. I couldn't continue to play. And number two, the boys and their parents were awful. That was just not an environment that you wanted to be in. And then number three, I just got that constant negative feedback that I wasn't strong enough to push through like Marika has been. And for me, I came into that a little bit later on, and a little bit of naivety helped me with that. But I mean, Marika still wants to be in the game. She wants to be a sideline reporter. She wants to do this. And I believe that you can. And I believe the game can be better for you. And I want that for you. But that also started early for both of us too. There's been different experiences that have changed our minds on this. So it can happen. It can definitely happen.
Yeah, and I also want to highlight, I mean, there's also tons of good change coming that I've seen. I mean, I'm so proud of Baseball BC and the girls program that we have here. I mean, over the summer, I participated and helped coach with among the other girls. These girls, a lot of the time, the other girls on Team Canada, they give their time, they do all this stuff, and I'm so proud of them for all the things that they've done and how they've developed girls baseball here, because now I see that there's so many more opportunities for girls playing baseball, and it's so much more widely accepted here. And just the amount of girls that turned out and wanted to play, I was like shocked, because there was not that many when I was younger. So to see like a huge rise of people come up is just really encouraging for me, and seeing all these young girls that are so optimistic about the future, and I'm so excited to see what they can do, because I'm sure this is only the beginning, and I hope to see more girls in college baseball and even beyond playing professionally eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to get girls in the game, to keep girls in the game, to grow that passion. I love baseball. Marika loves baseball. We're super passionate about it. And we wouldn't have survived a lot of the things that we have in the game if we didn't love the game so much. And I think even as those other things that we had to survive get better for hopefully the people that come forward, they're still going to need that passion for the game. And that gets created early, and that gets created by so many different people in so many different ways. And I mean, you want to see that, and you also want people to be accepting of that with young girls, with young women, to understand that they can love the game just as much as anyone else.